This video demonstrates how to assign a license to a Microsoft Word document. Before the user can run the Word document on their computer, they'll have to activate it to their machine using a code that you provide. To demonstrate this, we've also created a code-signed installer that will be used by the customer to install the Word document and licensing file to their computer. And so we're going to run that installer now and look at the user experience. Then we'll step back and look at the setup process. When we launch the installer, you'll be presented with some kind of a screen with some instructions and a custom icon and other information that you can put in the installer screen. And then when the user clicks to install, they can be presented with a license agreement. And then at the end of the install process, the Word document and associated files have been installed onto their computer, and there is a shortcut to launch it on their desktop. When the user launches the Word document, an activation screen is presented. The user is going to have to enter a code that you provide to activate this Word document to their computer. In this example, we're using a manual activation process where the user gives you the request number shown on the screen to you, the vendor, and then you give back the activation code needed to activate the Word document to their computer. It could also be done with an online serial number activation process where at the moment of purchase, the user receives a serial number and then they can activate whenever they want. Once the users enter the code to activate, the Word document is presented, and each launch thereafter it just automatically opens up the Word document. Let's examine what our installer has set up on the user's computer. We can see the shortcut goes to a folder under Program Files. That's your company folder, and inside that is your product folder. Inside that is the actual Word document. Now the Word document we're protecting contains VBA code, so it's a macro-enabled Word document, and for the most part that's probably the only kind of document that a developer is really concerned with protecting because they want to license their intellectual property so only paid users can use it. In addition to this Word document, we have a folder, and inside that folder we have the Quick License runtime file, and we've just copied that into the folder from the Quick License application. That's one of several tools we're going to be using to protect this Word document and create the installer. So we also have a ticket file, and that ticket file defines the type of license that we wanted to apply to that Word document. Now during the install process, you could install other files as well. For example, you may have multiple Word documents that all share the same license, so when any one is launched and activated for the first time, they're all activated. You might also have some other support files, for example, maybe a PDF user guide. One of the other things the installer must do is this folder needs to be copied to a specific location on the user's computer where the user has read-write access for this licensing system to work, and that's done by the installer. Where it's actually copying the folder, we'll see right here. It's just going to copy that folder from its original installed location directly to drive C. We have the same folder name with the same files shown here. And that's all done automatically by the install process. Finally, the installer we've created is an MSI compliant installer, meaning it's using Microsoft's recommended install technology. It also is easily uninstalled by the user. So for example, if the user would want to go to bring up the settings, and they would be able to see your installer there, and if they decide they wanted to remove your application, they would just click it and click uninstall. Let's look at the process used by a developer to apply a license to a Microsoft Word document. We've created a folder under Drive C called Word Project, and in there we have several subfolders. If we look at the Install Source folder, you can see we have our Word license folder containing our quick license runtime and a ticket that defines our license. Let's look how we constructed this ticket file. If we open up the quick license application, we see we've added one row of information that defines our license, which we'll look at in a moment. In the setup dialog here, we have a path to this Word license folder in our install folder, and this is the location where it's going to generate the ticket file that we're going to set up. So what we want to do is we've given a couple of bits of information here, a product name, a version number, security code, and you'll recognize those parameters in a little bit later in the process. But if we click on this first column of this row, it brings up the main license dialog that's used to define this license. And the essential parts of this type of license, which is going to be a simple product license that on launch will present an activation screen where the user has to enter an activation code to activate to their computer, and then it's a perpetual product license that will run forever. With Quick License, you can create other license types as well. For example, time-limited trial licenses or subscription licenses where the user has to pay a monthly or quarterly or annual fee to continue to use the software. But for this example, we're just using a very simple product license. And the only things we really have to set up to create that type of license is we've set the checkbox master ticket of new records. We want to set never timeout and allow same computer reactivation and show runtime errors. And then on the activation screen, activation required, machine calculated. And that's really all we need to do to set up a simple product license. When we click the Make Ticket button, it generates the ticket file into that folder that we looked at a moment ago, and it's just a binary file that has all the information to define this type of license. So let's go ahead and close out of there, and that's what would have created this Word product ticket file that defines everything about our license. And now we're going to look at how we're going to apply that to a Word document with a little bit of VBA code. To bind our Word document to the license we just created, we're going to have to insert some VBA code. And in the miscellaneous folder here, we have a copy of that VBA code. This VBA code comes with Office Protect, which is a companion product to Quick License used for protecting various kinds of Microsoft Office documents like Excel, Access, and also Word documents. So we simply want to open up this text file and just do a select all and then a copy command, and then we can return to our Word document, and we're going to open the Word document, go to the developer VBA panel, and in this document we're going to paste in that code. Now once we've pasted in that code, we're going to have to change a couple lines of that code to bind it to our specific named license. So in this line of code, here is the name of our license, the version number, and the security code, and these three parameters came from the main row in the Quick License application when we set up and generated that ticket file for the license. There's one other line of code here we have to adjust, and that is we have to give the name of the folder, which is in this case is set up to go directly on Drive C, and that's the name of the folder where ultimately the Quick License runtime and the ticket file that defines the license are going to be stored, and that's all set up by the installer. So other than that, the only thing we'll want to do is go to our VBA Properties dialog and make sure that this VBA code is hidden from view from the user by setting that checkbox and giving it a password. Now that we have our ticket file that defines our license and we've added some VBA code to bind our Word document to that license, let's go ahead and set up our installer. We'll launch the Click Install application and it'll bring up a screen of information to construct that installer. The main bits of information are we need to point to the source folder that has all the files in it that we ultimately want to get installed on the user's computer. We want to point to a folder that we want to put the generated installer into. And here's the name of our company name. That's the first folder that gets created under Program Files or Program Files x86. And then within that folder is a folder for our product itself. There's a version number. Here's the name of the actual setup file that's going to be generated. We have a path to a background screen and an image that we want to put in the top right corner of that screen. We have the name of the main installer screen and some instructions to the user, and maybe a copyright notice down in the corner of that main install screen. We can also go ahead and just click the default button. It'll construct kind of a default license agreement that will be presented, and you can customize that with, it uses HTML formatting tags. If you're familiar with that, you can go ahead and do a little customization if you want. If you want to take a look at what it's going to actually look like on the customer's computer, click that preview button and you'll see what the screen actually looks like before you build the installer. On the shortcut tab, we have one or more shortcuts that we can add either to the desktop or to the start menu to launch various documents like our Word document or maybe a PDF user guide. And then that's automatically created during the process of building our installer. When building our installer, we can go ahead and code sign it. We'll do that by selecting our code signing certificate, entering a password, and setting this checkbox. The purpose of code signing an installer is to give confidence to your user and also suppress some of the warning messages that might pop up from Smart Screen or the Windows OS or a virus scanner installed on the customer's computer. And to get a certificate, you'll have to go to an independent code signing authority, provide some information about your company. They'll kind of authenticate you as a company and you'll get a certificate. It'll cost you a little bit less than $100, and then you'll be able to use that certificate to code sign any installers for any applications that you want to build. So the final thing is we're going to, on the post-install copy panel here, we're going to add one line of information where we copy this Word license folder of files to a specific location on the computer that our Word document can have access to, and we'll just put that in a folder called Word license directly on drive C. So that was all the steps required to build our installer. Well, we've got it set up here to actually build it. We would just click the build button and it will create the installer in our output folder. Before a user can run your macro-enabled Word document, they're going to have to enable macros. If we open up a blank Word document and under the File menu options, you can bring up the Trust Center dialog and make sure under macro settings, enable all macros is selected. It's also possible to code sign your Word document. And the way you would do that, if you have your code signing certificate and the actual Word document that you're going to be adding a license to, you can just go to the developer panel and under Tools, select Digital Signature and then just choose your certificate. And the benefit of doing that is now the end user, they don't have to enable all macros. They can just go to the Trust Center and just set up, disable all macros except macros that are digitally signed. And some users may feel more secure about using that option. In this video, we demonstrated how you can use Quick License to define a license and generate a ticket file. You can then add some VBA code to your Microsoft Word document to bind it to that license. And finally, you can build an installer with Click Install to deliver that to your customer's computer. We're going to go over the process of actually activating your protected Word document again on the customer computer. In order to do that, we've manually reset the license for this machine so that when we launch the Word document, we're going to be presented with an activation screen again. And to get the activation code needed for this specific computer, we need to launch Quick License on our development machine and go to the license dialog on the activation panel. That's where the request number shown on the customer's computer can be put into this field. You'll click the activation button and the activation code that you send back to the customer is shown there. And now the customer can click Activate Now and start using your application.